Hello and welcome to What's in the Night Sky for July 2023. My name is Hayley and this month I'm going to be highlighting the morning and evening planets, the constellation of Aquila, the Sea of Tranquility on the Moon and the Planetary Nebula M27. Let's begin by taking a look at the positions of the Moon and the planets this month. Mercury, Venus and Mars are all evening planets. All three of them remain low to the horizon and might be quite tricky to spot. The best time to look for Venus and Mars is at the beginning of the month. As the month goes on, they'll begin to set earlier and earlier, and by the end of the month, Venus will be setting around the same time as the Sun and Mars just shortly afterwards. So try to get out during the first half of the month to see Venus and Mars. You can see here that I'm looking towards the west at about 10 o'clock. In Leicester, the sun sets at around 9:30 at the beginning of the month. If you're further north than Leicester, then the sun will set later. So the thing to do is to head out after sunset, wait for Venus to pop out of the evening twilight. You'll see that first because it's the brightest. And then as time goes on, the sky gets darker and you'll see Mars coming to join Venus near to the horizon. As is often the case with these things, the flatter the horizon you've got, the better, because you'll be able to see them for longer and observe them whilst the sky is getting darker for as long as possible. Venus shows an increasingly smaller crescent over time, so you can have a go at spotting the phase of Venus with a small telescope if you have one. It is possible to try during the day, but you need to make sure that you are certain about where the sun is and that you don't accidentally look at the sun with your eyes or with your equipment, because as we know that can be very dangerous. So make sure you're aware of the position of the sun, stand in the shadow of a building if you can, and then see if you can spot Venus's crescent during the day. You may also be able to spot Mercury emerging into the evening sky from the beginning of the month. It will be a tricky spot, and the best time for Mercury is actually close to the middle of the month. So I'm just going to take us on to the middle of the month, and I'm actually going to go to the 19th, because on the 19th there is a really nice trio of Venus, Mercury and the moon, the very thin crescent moon. This one will be difficult to spot because it occurs just after sunset, very low. The moon will be a really, really thin crescent, but this is a good chance to see Venus, the crescent moon, and the ever elusive Mercury in the evening twilight in the middle of the month. Let's move on to the morning planets now. So we've got Mercury, Venus and Mars in the evening, and we've got Jupiter and Saturn as well-placed planets for spotting in the morning skies. So I'm just going to move us on after midnight into the early hours of the morning. I'm just going to scroll us around to the east, and you can see that we've got Saturn over here and Jupiter's just risen, and we're on the 20th of July now. So if I go back to the 1st of July, you can see that you have to wait a bit longer at the beginning of the month for Saturn and Jupiter to both have risen, and as the month goes on the situation gets better. They rise earlier and earlier. And you can have a go at both of these with a pair of binoculars or a small telescope if you have one. With a small telescope, you'll easily be able to pick out Saturn's rings and its large moon Titan as well. And with a small telescope for Jupiter, let's go a little bit later. Not so late that the sun is beginning to rise though. For Jupiter, with a small telescope, you can expect to see the 4 Galilean moons and Jupiter's north and south equatorial cloud belts as well. If we go through to the 7th, you can see the moon paired with Saturn on the 7th. Here we go, gibbous moon and Saturn, fairly close together. And if we keep going to the 12th, then we have a nice pairing of the moon and Jupiter. And we've got Uranus in this region as well, and you can have a go at that with a small telescope if you have one. So we've got a crescent moon and Jupiter, and then if we just go forward by one more day then we have a crescent moon and the Pleiades star cluster, otherwise known as the Seven Sisters. This will be a nice target for binoculars. You should just about be able to get them both into the field of view of a pair of binoculars, the crescent moon and the Pleiades, depending on the size of the pair of binoculars that you've got. And this field of view that I have here is the field of view of a 10 by 50 pair of binoculars. You will also be able to see them with your naked eye. You'll need to go out at around 3 o'clock, because 3 o'clock in the morning, because you want the Pleiades and the moon to be above the horizon, but you don't want it to be getting too bright with the sun starting to rise. So about 3 o'clock in the morning is the optimum time for that one. This month's full moon takes place on the 3rd of July. So let's move to the 3rd and move ourselves around to the south to see the full moon. So we're looking at about 1 o'clock in the morning on the 3rd of July at the moment. Since July marks the 54th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing, I've chosen its landing site, the Sea of Tranquility, as our moonwatch target for this month. Described by Buzz Aldrin as magnificent desolation, we can find the Sea of Tranquility just here, where I've placed my mouse, nestled between the Sea of Fertility over here and the Sea of Serenity over here. And you can also see the Sea of Crises here, just to the northeast, standing on its own. So this area that I'm ringing with my mouse now is the Sea of Tranquility. The best time to observe it is the few days following the full moon or the few days following the new moon, so that we can explore its features as they appear along the terminator line. If we just follow that through, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days following the full moon. So if you observe over that period of days, you'll be able to watch the Sea of Tranquility disappear, and you'll be able to see its changing appearance as it begins to disappear. New moon occurs on the 17th. So if you want to watch it reappear, then you need to look a bit earlier in the evening. So just after sunset from the 17th, and you'll begin to see the moon coming back over the days following, starting with a thin crescent and uncovering the features and the Sea of Tranquility as time goes on. I'm just trying to get that balance between a dark sky and the moon still being above the horizon. So we go to the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, and you can see that the Sea of Tranquility is uncovering again as we head towards the end of the month. If you have a small telescope or a pair of binoculars, then you can explore the area around the Sea of Tranquility. There's not any major impact craters on the sea floor, but there are some smaller features to spot. And if you want to see the Apollo 11 landing site, there is no amateur telescope that is going to be able to show you that. But there is a telescope in orbit around the moon called the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, and that is powerful enough to spot the Apollo 11 landing site. And if we have a look at an image from the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, we can clearly see the remains of the Apollo 11 mission. You can see the remaining part of the lunar module, and it's surrounded by a dark area where the astronauts took their first steps. We can also see the passive seismic experiment package, which provided the first seismic data for the moon, and you can also see the laser ranging retroreflector, which is used to measure a very precise Earth-Moon distance. And you can also see the dark lines that show the trails that the astronauts made between the lunar module, their experiments, and the Little West crater, which is located about 50 metres from the lunar module. Let's leave the moon behind now and take a look at our constellation of the month for July, which is the constellation of Aquila. You can see Aquila over here with the bright star Altair. So over the last 2 months, we have looked at the constellation of Lyra, home of the bright star Vega, and the constellation of Cygnus, home of the bright star Deneb. And now we look at the constellation of Aquila, home of the bright star Altair. And these 3 bright stars, Vega, Deneb, and Altair, create the asterism of the summer triangle, which we talked about last month. If we put the constellation art on, we can see that Aquila is depicted as an eagle. It represents the eagle that carried Zeus's thunderbolts and brought the mortal Ganymede into the heavens to serve as cupbearer, and the word Aquila means eagle in Latin. For our Deep Sky Challenge this month, I'd like to point out to you the Dumbbell Nebula, which lies not in the constellation of Aquila, but in this faint constellation of Vulpecula. I'm just going to take off the constellation art and the asterism lines and tell you how to find it. It was the first planetary nebula ever to be discovered, found in 1764 by Charles Messier, and it carries the designation of Messier 27 or M27. And the way to find it is if you can find the bright stars of Deneb and Altair in the summer triangle, and then between them we've got this little constellation Sagitta, which is shaped like an arrow, and the Dumbbell Nebula is just a short distance away from Sagitta, and we can spot it just over here. It's quite faint, not visible to the naked eye, but it is considered to be the easiest planetary nebula to find. You should be able to find it with a reasonable pair of binoculars, and if you have a small telescope, you might be able to start to see some of the dumbbell structure as well. A planetary nebula is a region of gas and dust that is created by a dying star. They're formed when stars like our sun run out of fuel and cast off their outer layers, leaving a tiny white dwarf star in the centre. They've got nothing to do with planets, even though they're called planetary nebulas, and they're named because astronomers originally, hundreds of years ago, thought that they were looking at gas giant planets when they found these things, so they named them as planetary nebula. Let's finish by having a look at for the International Space Station. There's a nice friendly pass on the 16th of July. By friendly, I mean at a reasonable time of day. So the 16th of July, starting at about 10:40 p.m. And when you're looking for the International Space Station, have a look to the west. See if you can spot it rising above the horizon. And then you can follow it over the course of 4 or 5 minutes as it makes its journey across the night sky. If you are not available on the 16th, or you find that the weather's not very good where you are, then you can have a look at the Spot the Station website to see what other times there are for the International Space Station going over for your location. That brings me to the end of our night sky tour for July. I hope you have clear skies for all of your observing this month.